pulls out their bye-bye gun and points it at the monster.
I don't want to have to use this, but you forced my hand.
But I knew you were going to do that. I also bought my own gun. Bye-bye gun. I hope you're ready to whack some ruin in the world and whack and ruin. So, this is a strange little mashup of a game. Initially, it's a game I passed up from premium games because I didn't think it looked interesting enough to buy. But then I got in a curious situation to actually be offered to test the physical version of it, and I accepted that. And well, that's who we are now. Since that was a job kind of thing, I didn't do the live stream of it because live streaming is, you know, a little bit more takes a little longer. I wanted it to actually be done, so in a timely manner. So I spent about I think about 3 weeks playing through it in spare time that I was. That I could afford to the game. Now, it's been a while since I did this test, and it's been just sitting in my review copy stack, and I thought it was about time to give it that heave-ho of it. So, let's get into it. So, this I would best describe as Invader Zim meets Shmup / Bullet Hell meets Legend of Zelda, with a dash of pure evil. Anyway, in Whack and Ruin, you play as Whack, who is, well, a minion of a great evil that wishes to conquer all. The only problem is, well, he whacks everything. Not simply whack, he ruins it all. He destroys the planets he goes to. Instead of conquering them, he leaves, as his master puts, asteroid belts in the remains. Given one last try to properly conquer a world, you are sent to a new world to conquer. Fresh and perked with green life and humans and people, Whack is given the job to conquer it all. But Whack doesn't really give a shit. He's like, I want to destroy the world. This is what I do. This is what I do, baby. And in a very Invader Zim kind of way, he just goes about his journey, you know, acting with everyone like a buffooned idiot. Now, the overworld and dungeons, like, the dungeons are pretty much the most Zelda-esque element. Like, the dungeons are designed kind of like a Zelda, a 2D Zelda game. This is a 2D game. I'm sure it's pretty obvious in the video, right? Yeah. The overworld is a little bit of a different mechanic to it. So, you have the fresh world as you start, and as you go through the game, you're given these opportunities to ruin areas, to fill them with chaos and destruction. Now, these areas require souls for you to corrupt them. So, you have to gather souls from various means of fallen enemies or chests, rewards, and such. Donating the amount of souls necessary, you can corrupt the area. Now, it's important to note, you can miss out on stuff when you corrupt an area. So, if you want to 100% the game, you do need to fully explore properly in its normal state before corrupting, because there are things you can only get in its non-corrupted, but at the same time, there are only things you can do in its corrupted state. So, to 100% the game, you're going to have to do some proper exploring. However, the things that are necessary... I did not get into a situation where I couldn't complete the game. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily impossible. After all, that's happened in even some of the best of games where people can find a really weird way to lock the game. But I did not experience that problem. I didn't experience it, and there's only, I think, about... There's 3 key items I missed, and 1 usable item I never got, and 2 magic books I never got. Other than that, I got, like, everything, so, yeah. Now, throughout your game, you will also get human souls as you start, how should I say, wreaking destruction amongst the life. You can get human souls and use those to upgrade your full base weapons. Now, you will only simply start with Fireball when you start your journey. You're gifted it. But throughout your journey, you will find a blade, electricity, and ice, including a shield that can absorb bullet damage, but it depletes your magic as a cost, along with many, many usable items that will buff, attack, and heal. Now, this would be one of the bigger differences inventory-wise to Zelda. There are a lot of fucking items that do a lot of different things. There's a lot of stuff here, so you can really do a lot of different strats and stuff. There's a lot of different ideas that you could buff, assist with your normal attacks, making them stronger, or other elements that you can do to the battlefield. So there's a lot of nice. But essentially, you're just going to be causing chaos, and you'll be going from dungeon to dungeon, similar to a Zelda game, meeting the quote-unquote good two shoes heroes and citizens of the world trying to stop you from, well, wreaking havoc and destruction upon the world. Gameplay-wise, the game misses a very odd sense of being a twin-stick shooter on top of all this. The reason I say this is because this is the Switch version, and this is probably easier to do on the PC version, I imagine. But on the Switch version, you cannot customize the controls at all. There's no in-game prompts for that. They might be able to do it on the Switch itself. I know the PS4 you can custom the controls of the system to override the game not having that. But the game itself doesn't. So I don't know if the Switch has that off the top of my head. I will look into that, actually. I probably should have done that, you know. Expert review products. Hey, I just try to speak my mind. I try to be real with y'all. But anyway, I'll try to add that here if that's possible on the Switch itself. But the game itself does not provide that. And the reason I bring that up is because, well, obviously one analog stick you move, the other one turns the way you face. Now, the button calls this change target. And the reason it does this is when you're facing an enemy locked onto them, as you can lock onto enemies, and just focus on moving around bullets and stuff, which is, of course, very useful against several bosses that. But the thing is, you flick it and you can change target when there's multiple targets that. But if you were able to use the two of them together along with your attack button, which is A, to cast your different attacks, you would be able to actually run this like a twin-stick shooter. The sad thing is, because it's the A button that shoots your normal attack, that for a normal playstyle, because, you know, you would use your thumb for A and your other thumb for the moving, so you would have to do like the Dark Souls strat, like if you know the Dark Souls strat, where you hold your index finger on the O button so you can run, and then your thumb is free for the camera stick. That way you have better visual while running that. Some people don't really know about this playstyle. It's kind of a meme with Souls players. I definitely ain't the only person that does this for certain situations. But unless you basically do that playstyle, you'll never make use of this as like a twin stick shooter, and that's a little bit of a shame, because there are some situations I would like to have a little bit more direct control than relying on the lock-on control of the game. But that's a personal preference. Lock-on does get the job done. There's only a few situations I really feel like that could have been a little bit better doing it that way, but it is what it is. Now, it would have probably been nice to actually made one of the trigger buttons do that, because the left big trigger lets you lock on, the big white trigger switches your main weapon, and then the two front triggers switch between your items. Now, it would have probably been nice to make, like, the front left one also shoot, and then you could have actually done it that way, but, well, it is what it is. Now, when you collect human souls, you use those to upgrade your weapons, but you can't do that until later in the game as the world is getting corrupted. Because first, the areas have to be corrupted, and some of the human souls you have to do certain things to be able to gather those souls. But most of them you just have to find them, but sometimes they're behind certain puzzles and things that you have to solve. Now, most of the puzzles are a mix of ideas along with Zelda elements. But I'd say the one that's the most annoying is the lightning puzzle, where you use your basic lightning attack, and you try to chain lightning between several objects to another end to, like, power something on or unlock something. I didn't encounter a breaking bugs or anything. There were a few minor things, like there's weird audio cuts when you're switching areas at times that are a little bit odd. And then there's a weird, like, thing where you can change the way you whack faces once per pause screen with the white stick. It really doesn't have any actual effect, but it's kind of weird that you can pause it and then you can flick the white stick and he will face that direction and then it will stop working. There are a few objects where overlaying on each other are a bit wonky, but it's not per se, like, game breaking or anything. The lightning puzzle is the one that seemed the most odd to me, though. It, like, maybe there's something I was doing wrong about it. But as far as I could research or test out with it, it seemed very janky and not very, how should I say, reoccurringly accurate, like, on the distance of objects sometimes. Like, sometimes they look closer, but they wouldn't link, and other times they'd look a little farther, but then wouldn't link, and not really quite sure what was maybe going wrong or right on that. But I can tell you a lot of the lightning puzzles, where you had to chain lightning, gave me a lot of trouble, especially one that was in the last dungeon. That one was absolutely dreadful. I literally spent forever trying to actually get the chain that actually carry all the way through. But otherwise, I didn't encounter any actual bugs that prevented me from finishing the game or anything at all. Now, being a mix of, like, a shmup in a Zelda-esque game, most of the regular enemies don't really do a whole lot that's too bullet helly. They're very simple shmuppy to things that just run up to you and try to attack you. It is most of the bosses where the element of bullet hell comes in, as several of the bosses are a lot more like that. The music in the game isn't exactly anything too amazing to me. It gets the job done kind of thing, but it's likely not something you're going to slap into your disk drive and walk out to it. But it gets the mood of what's going on. It's not exactly a serious game. I mean, come on. Like I said, the main character kind of reminds me of Affiliation here. Aesthetically, the game, it has a very Flash kind of look to me. It's not super lazy looking Flash, but it does still give me a very Flash kind of vibe to it. It's both interesting and kind of forgettable to me. Like, I wouldn't say it's ungodly, like, it's certainly a much better thing in that regard, but it's not exactly memorable towards me. It's there. Honestly, I find more humor in, like, the dialogue of the characters interacting, as though, like I said, the main character acts quite like Invader Zim, being more of a try-hard in his world conquest, or at least in Wax's case of destroying everything. It's definitely not a very serious plot when it comes to a lot of what's going on. Overall, like, honestly, the game is alright. It's not the end of the world kind of game. It gets the job done as something you want. And being on the Switch, it's a decent game to be on the portability. You get a few options like difficulty and such that you can adjust if you want. Honestly, compared to when I originally looked at the game when it first went on sale with Premium Games, I have to say I find it a little bit more interesting than what I initially had as an impression when looking into it. Another interesting aspect of corrupting the world, however, is the fact that while the environment also changes, so do the mobs, and usually most of the mobs in the regular version of the world are vastly easier than usually the ones that are in the chaotic version. The chaotic version does start getting some much harder enemies as you progress through it. Now, Whack and Ruin, I think, is a very interesting idea overall. A Zelda shmup type game. It's an interesting idea, but probably my biggest problem with picking it up myself when it first came out was that it's $45 game, essentially, through Premium Editions, which is still available. You can still buy both versions of this game for the Switch at Premium Editions, and the pre-order for the PS4 version is also up still. As far as I know, the PS4 edition has not came out yet. So you can still order the PS4 version if you want to get that version. Obviously, you'd get access to trophies and that as an additional bonus. But honestly, the game runs fine on the Switch. So if you like the portability, this is one of the few times I can tell you that the Switch version can be for you, because I did not encounter anything that feels like it was hindered being on the Switch, as some games sometimes do, sadly. But the price, that's where it gets a little tricky for me, because as much as I thought it was definitely an interesting mashup idea, $54 still feels quite expensive. This feels like something I would have weathered Red Arts do like a 1999 title of. As I've said before, that a 1999 feels like an acceptable price for a budget-ish game, because you're gonna barely get about 7 to 10 hours out of this unless you go for like 100%ing the game. Like, I beat it in like 7-something hours, so it's not an insanely long game. And that's probably my biggest problem with the physical version itself, is it just feels really overpriced even for the standard. Because the standard is $45, but if you want the, you know, like collector's edition version, you're looking at $60 on that, and that just feels very overpriced to me. I honestly think this game as a physical product should have been like $19.99 through like maybe Red Arts or something, honestly, because like that's a really expensive price, honestly. I find it hard to recommend for that. But as a digital form, though, this game goes for $10 on everything except for Switch, which is, I believe, it was $12.99 on Switch. So, yeah, it's even more expensive on the Switch, oddly enough, which is weird. It's also very weird because when you consider the fact more expensive for the PS4 physical standard version, which is kind of odd. Though I'm assuming that's because of the steel book that you get with it. So it's kind of weird. The physical is cheaper on the Switch, but it's more expensive digitally on the Switch. Irony! Anyway, though, I honestly would say it's kind of hard to recommend the physical of this. If you find it interesting and you like the idea in it, go support it, of course. It's still available through Premium Games, even though it's been out for probably about a year now, I think. Let's see. Pre-orders went live September 2022. And it was supposedly released somewhere early 2023. So, yeah, it's pretty much been out for a good while, and it's still in stock, so. It is important to note not to confuse this release with a European version of this game that was released as a digital code This is an ESRB weighted version from Premium Games. I'm trying to remember what the EU version was through. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. I will probably insert a picture here, but that only gives you a digital code that is not on a cartridge in any form. It is a code, so be very careful if you are looking this up through eBay or something. Now, sadly, I wish I could tell you you could find this game available cheaper on the internet or not, but of course the scalpers, or, you know, they have it on eBay for either barely the price that is at Premium or higher. There's several people listing it for like $70 on eBay, so of course, if I'm going to recommend where to buy it right now, it's definitely from Premium Games, obviously, because, I mean, they're the original people releasing it, so honestly, the best you can hope for is maybe they'll do some kind of sale, which, as far as I know, Premium Games has not done any, like, sales or Black Friday type sales before on any of their merchandise yet. So, that remains to be seen, and that's obviously a risque thing. So, that... I wish there was a better way to tell you to get this as a affordable price in a physical form, but, at the moment of this video, it doesn't exist sadly. And it's a bit of a shame, because I do think it's actually an interesting game to check out. I just feel like the price is way, way overpriced. This is the first Premium game I also went through. While I own several Premium's games, this is the first one I've actually went all the way through. And I have to definitely say, the catalog that I've bought so far, several titles do come off as maybe being a bit overpriced, so hopefully maybe the next game I play from their catalog won't feel as stuffed. Now, admittedly, Premium Edition makes their games look really nice. They have these kind of NES box slides they slip into a slip cover and that, like, they definitely make them look nice, but all the shebang isn't worth the extra money to me personally, but that's just me. Either way, at the end of the day, Whack and Ruin is an okay game I can recommend, especially for the go, but otherwise, probably a skip for most people when it comes to it physically. It feels overpriced, and I don't think we're going to see affordable copies that easily on eBay unless the game just doesn't sell at all, which could happen in the future down the road, but time will only tell on that. Anyway, though, this was a simple review today. If you feel like you've learned anything interesting, feel free to leave a like, and if you feel like you learned nothing at all, feel free to leave a dislike. Feel free, and until next time, whack some ruin out there in the world of trouble.